Hello, everybody. We are going to get going for the interest of time. I'm going to pop up on our screen our presentation for today. Come back there. I want to make sure that sound's on so we can hear it. Give everybody a second to log in. Let me screen. Share some. There you go. All right, everyone. Well, we are gonna get going. And Haley, can you see my screen? Good, everything? All set? Give me a thumbs up.
All good.
All right, sounds great. All right, everybody. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's presentation, Reducing Upper Body Tic Pain, Self-Massage and Movement Strategies. My name is Alexandra Walsh, and I am the Manager of Programs at the Tourette Association of America, and I'll also be your moderator for tonight's presentation. Participants will have the ability to engage in a Q&A discussion with our panelists at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to place your questions in the Q&A box throughout the entirety of the presentation. We also ask that you please take the time to fill out a brief survey at the end of the presentation. The QR code will be displayed for you on the screen, and your responses not only provide us feedback on our programming, but allow us the ability to host more programming like it in the future. Tonight's webinar presenters will be Katie Pudhorodsky. For 21 years, Katie has been a massage therapist in private practice, in the classroom, and now as an online educator. At Katie Massage, her unique specialty is treating people with head, neck, and jaw pain or dysfunction. She refers with dentists, ENTs, and myofunctional therapists. Her passion for educating people experiencing craniofacial pain grew into 2 online video courses, including Self-Help to Relieve Head, Neck, and Jaw Pain at Help Head Neck Pain. These courses provide actionable steps for learners, including massage, stretching, stabilization, habits to address, and the role of proper tongue placement. When Katie is not with clients, she is always happy to talk about chickens, or what she has just harvested from her family's plot at the neighborhood community garden. Our next presenter is Raquel Cunningham. Raquel is a strength and conditioning coach based in Southern California. Her Tourette diagnosis came when she was 6 years old, and athletics have played a strong role in her tic management ever since. She holds a bachelor's degree from University of California, Santa Barbara in psychology, with a minor in exercise and sports science. She was a competitive swimmer and water polo player before starting her personal training career over 12 years ago at a renowned gym in New York City, then in California, before going into private training. Kettlebells are her favorite exercise modality, and you can find her starting to learn American Sign Language with her children. Without further ado, I am going to pass over the presentation to start with Katie.
Hello, I'm excited to be here. Let's go ahead and click on to the next one. So I am Katie Pudhorodsky. I am a licensed massage therapist, and you can go one more as well. I live and practice in Austin, Texas at my hands-on practice. Like she said in the introduction, I specialize in head, neck, and jaw pain. That's sort of what makes my work unique. And I also have an online course because I believe very strongly that people can learn how to take care of their own bodies, make some habit changes, and get this forward progress in their bodies. I had the privilege of presenting at TicCon just a few months ago when you guys came to my state of Texas. And there, just by doing some hands-on work of everybody doing it on themselves, we changed how the teeth fit together. People had a connection of those muscles to their headaches or their facial pains. They got easier range of motion in their necks and an ability to open up their jaw more. So there we go. That was showing me that we've got something that you can do for yourself to take care of yourself in this way. All right. When we are going through today, I am going to talk about a few muscles, and we're going to be focusing in this neck shoulder range. With those, I'll show you some massage stretching techniques and the pain patterns that those muscles can show when they're too tight, just a basic overview to help guide us through this process. And then we'll go through a few perpetuating factors. So those are factors that keep that pain going. So some things that you can look at in yourself. Some of these will be really good to keep in mind for watching out and supporting your children as well, because I heard that was something that you wanted as well from this week. When you are practicing some of these massage stretching techniques or trying to learn in different ways on your own, I want you to be really kind to yourself, listen to your body, show yourself some compassion. Think about it that way. My quick general blanket statement for today is also if you've had any accidents or injuries, be compassionate of those and mindful of that, and take your precautions that you need to know about. All right, let's get started. Go ahead and click me over. All right, so you guys have Tourette syndromes with tics, and those tics have a lot of things that can affect the neck. Here's a long list of those. When you're having these muscular tics, it's definitely affecting the nervous system. It is perhaps pulling or compressing on certain nerves and discs. It is also causing the muscles to go into a spasm, possibly feel like they're ripping and tearing. So then they go into lockdowns. It's quite complicated, and there's a lot of potential for pain to go on in these areas. So I think really important, calming down the nervous system and then being able to address those tight muscles that are giving you this continual pain. One thing of note in here is I saw a few people that were interested in learning about vocal tension. I do have one really great stretch in here, and I'll point that out. That will help with the vocal tension from either voice tics or that kind of head thrusting back that you might feel a lot of tension around that vocal area. So next slide. All right, so we're going to just talk quickly about what trigger points in muscles are. Trigger points are localized tender areas within muscle bellies or attachments, which when provoked, that could either mean they're just mad at you or something is pushing on it. They're going to produce a referral pattern to a target zone somewhere else in the body. That pattern can feel like pain, tingling, numbness, itching, other sensations. So it could show up like a headache, as we'll see through as we see some photos and go through that description. Trigger points are going to create myofascial pain. Myo means muscles. Fascia is that connective tissue that surrounds and envelops all of our organs, muscles, and those kind of things. So it's just meaning sort of soft tissue pain is what it's going to feel like. Trigger points can create restrict movement. So restricting movement may be if some of our neck muscles are too tight, we're not going to be able to fully rotate the head or take the head ear to shoulder. We're going to find that it's really stiff and sticky. Muscle weakness created by trigger points may be that we just get really fatigued and tired. Really, the best example we'll say, like with the jaw muscles, if they have trigger points, we may be really tired from talking or fatigued from chewing. Okay, next. All right, so this will be our first muscle, and we'll go ahead and use this as an opportunity to see what a trigger point is. This muscle is upper trapezius. Upper trapezius, really, we're only at the photo on the left of your screen. We're only looking at that muscle belly, that's the back of the neck and the top of the shoulder. Those X's on the muscles, and you can see from the picture on your right, are the X's represent where a common trigger point is. So that would be the actual trigger point. And then all the red stipulation is where they can refer their pain out to. So when we're looking at that red stipulation, it doesn't mean that it's more intense where it's dark red. The stipulation shows us where it's more common. So more people would feel that sensation or the pain where it's the darker red. Fewer people would feel it where it's the lighter stipulation, but you could still feel it there. All right. So upper trapezius is the back of the neck and upper shoulders. It's the one where if we go up to someone, we're like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Can you just rub it? We're probably talking about this muscle up here. When it activates, it will elevate the shoulder. So it will shoulder shrug. Sometimes people will even have it so tight that it will stay as a high shoulder, and you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror or someone else and you'll see it represented as a high shoulder because it's pulling up so much. Upper trapezius, when it is tight, has its trigger points and sends out its pain pattern. We can see in the picture that it's going to be up the back of the neck, arch around the ear, and hang out near the eye, maybe even behind the eye. So those headaches that you're feeling in this area. Another interesting place that comes from the trigger point in the upper shoulder will be showing up at the angle of the jaw. When someone is on my table as a massage therapist, I can, for some people, push on this muscle if there is an active trigger point there, and they're like, oh, I feel that in the angle of my jaw, or oh, you turned on my headache. That's not always something to be worried about if you're on a massage table. If that's a normal and common pattern that you feel, I always go, great. Now we've figured out what muscle is causing that problem. So let's lengthen out and create a healthier muscle balance there. So if you're ever reaching for these muscles and you push on them, you may feel the same, that it lights up a little bit of that headache. All right. So go ahead and click on to the next one. This next muscle is SCM. SCM stands for sternocleidomastoid. That big long name just tells us the bones that it comes off of. But it is this big belly here that follows through the neck. It has two bellies. And when this muscle activates, it will take us ear to shoulder, and it will also take us rotation to the opposite side. For you guys with these coughing tics or this inhalation tic, you're probably overactivating SCM. So it's nice to be able to create some length and some rest to this muscle. I think that'll cover the basics of the motion of that muscle that you guys need to know. Headache patterns show behind the ear, in the ear. So your ear issues here, a feeling of underwater, itchy fullness, loss of high pitches in there. So ringing in the ear as well. So those are some ear issues that may show up when this muscle is too tight. I really like to point out the headache that's above the eye and that arches around the eye. Interesting, this muscle will show up as a headache with visual disturbance. So a headache with visual disturbance, if you ask your doctor, why are you having those? They'll say, oh, you have migraines. So that could be a common thing, and they'll miss the tight muscle. So keep in mind that you had tight muscles and it could be connected into that. Let's go ahead and click over. All right, so let's do a little action here. I can't see you in this webinar, so a good thing to remember if you're getting confused and lost is that this webinar will be recorded and you can watch it another time, and you can watch it multiple times and work along, all right? So I cannot watch you to make sure you're doing this safe, so trust your body on these. So our neck and shoulder warm up and a little bit of a massage through the whole shoulder girdle is going to be rolling the shoulders. So I'm starting in a backwards pattern here, and you're just feeling that full range of motion. Don't go too fast. And feel the shoulder blades massage onto the back. Go ahead and take that forward a little bit. I'm going to keep moving us forward, and you can continue on with these. Bringing those arms into what we're going to call a stick 'em up position, or your scarecrow position maybe. So rolling those arms forward, you can make them a little bigger if that feels good, and you can take them backward. In any of these stretches, when we get into any type of massage work, if it feels like you're having an active tic during that time, maybe just wait. It's your body. You call it. There are a lot that you'll want to wait through. And I want you to experiment and try. Perhaps once you're familiar with these type of things, it may help to close the eyes, that you're not stimulated from a neurological standpoint, and you can sort of calm into that body after a few nice relaxing breaths, and then go through these massage and stretching techniques. Okay, click on. All right, this is really my favorite, so I'm really glad to include this and share it with you. This is one that's great for SCM, but we can specialize it for a few other things too. We're going to specialize it for a lot of the vocal tics that you may be having. A lot of this grasping around your voice, if you're having problems swallowing, and if you're having tongue thrusts or sound effects that always sort of really fatigue out and overwork the tongue. So we'll find a way to add that in. So keep in mind and specialize this for you. So again, I'm going to show you where about this muscle is, but we do get to get another few muscles here. And then this is our collarbone or our clavicle. We are going to pick a side. I'm going to pick my left side. I'm going to reach crossbody with my right hand under my left clavicle, anchor that skin under the clavicle into my ribs, and then anchor it down. So pull it down towards like my belly button. And I'm even gonna do double hands. So I'm really gonna anchor in on one side. And then, very important on this part, looking up and away. The anchoring part is very important so that you don't just pull back with the neck and compromise the upper neck. So please make sure that you are anchoring on one side and looking up and away. Now, at this point, you get to find your sweet spot that feels like a nice, delicious stretch where you need it. Start on a more reserved kind of stretch pattern and intensity, and later on you can increase that or just find what's comfortable. But right now you're just learning what to do. So you're looking up and at an angle. You can see we can pick different angles, separate the teeth if you need to. And let's come out of that. I'll upgrade it for you on the second side that we do together. So for me, for the second side, I'm going to hold down on my right side with my left hand first, anchor that tissue into the ribs, overlap hands, and anchor down. Now we're looking up and away, finding that sweet spot where it feels healthy and safe. I'm still remembering to breathe as well. Now, we're going to upgrade this one because I promised a little bit of tongue action, and it's going to get down through the throat. So your tongue is going to stretch out away from your hand. It's going to stretch out away from your hand. All right. Good. So now we have a nice long internal stretch through that whole line. All right. These you can hold up to 15 seconds in a position. And like I said, really make sure you're anchoring down to protect the back of the neck. Make sure you're breathing to relax the body. If it helps later on, once you understand it, to close the eyes, to calm the nervous system, even taking a few relaxing breaths before you do these stretches. Go ahead. All right, next slide. All right, so this one's for next side flexion. So we will get a little bit of SCM, but we're really going to get on the sides of the neck. This is a good one if you're needing a stretch to do and you're sort of in public and to get some relief, you may enjoy it. So make sure you're sitting and legs are uncrossed with all of these stretches actually, and shoulders are down. So we're very simply taking the ear to the shoulder. And then we're going to take the upper ear and reach it up towards the ceiling. So a little lift with that. And holding that for 3 seconds. Ear to the other side, lift it to the ceiling for 3 seconds. And relax it down. Remember to take a pause if you need to. And that is that one. I recommend 3 seconds for each hold and 10 times each side. But of course, if you need to pause and stop, then however many times it ends up being. All right, let's go on to the next. So perpetuating factors are talking about things that you may be doing to your body or habits that you're doing, knowing or unknowingly, that can keep a pain continuously happening. Of course, it really sounds like tics will be a perpetuating factor to neck pain, but we can't 100% stop that, right? So we can look at things outside of just having tics, of how else may we be aggravating this pain. Let's go on to our first. All right, big one. This is no more stomach sleeping. So stomach sleeping is really bad for a few different points. We'll mainly talk in this upper body first. When you're on your stomach, you have to be able to breathe somehow because you can't just breathe into the pillow. So you'll be rotating the head and that pillow would be pushing it into extension. So that would be bringing the head back. So you're rotating all of the spine and the muscles and then pushing it back. It's going to give anybody some cricks in the neck, no matter what other conditions your body has. The other thing that you may be doing in that position is pushing the jaw out of alignment. So we've got issues in there. That does compromise breathing as well. So we may no longer be breathing in our best way, and we may resort to mouth breathing when we should be nasal breathing, and not getting a deep, restful sleep. Commonly also with stomach sleeping, we'll tend to bring one arm up, and that's going to tighten up that upper trap. It will also give us some low back pain and possibly some plantar fasciitis because we're pointing those toes all night. So side sleeping and back sleeping, other options, you can always do those in a better form or a more aggravating form. So at least come off of stomach sleeping or try to pull yourself off of that as a general rule. Okay, next. If you are reaching up to stay away from some of this neck pain, you want to watch out that you're not also weighing the shoulders down. Best example I know is when I'm traveling on the airplane, if I have my heavy backpack on my shoulders, weighing those down, and then I have to lift straight overhead to get the roller board that is above and weighs a lot and not a lot of room to manage it down. So take off your backpack before you put it up or take it down so that you're not pinning nerves and muscles through here as you're using that. This could also be the same case if you have a book bag or something or a laptop bag and you're reaching for up for your trunk. Then if you're at home, make sure you're using a step stool if necessary. If you're getting something heavy that's above you, best two examples I usually think of are if you have a heavy crock pot and you have to take that weight onto your extended neck, or if you are getting that big box of, let's say, holiday ornaments out of the upper part of the closet. All right, so just use a step stool to make that a little easier. Okay, next one. All right, so there's a few different thoughts with positioning. What we definitely want to just be aware of is if you've got your head rotated for a long period of time. This could be if you're at a laptop and you have your screen too much to one side, so you're in this kind of position. Or if you're doing data entry and you are taking data from someone that's sitting beside you, those kind of examples. So if you can, position your desk, move your body in these ways. I mentioned in here the sort of cool kid driving position because you may be slouching in one way, holding a hand up at the top of the steering wheel with one hand in your lap, where you're really aggravating this high-low shoulder, or lean your chair too far back, and we can't drive this way, so we pull our bodies forward so our eyes are at the horizontal plane. So that's a lot of stretch, overuse of the neck in that sense. One more positioning thing I'll add in here is sitting on the couch. So this one can also really be great with applying with children. If you have a favorite sort of slouch kind of position that you're in and tucking a leg up and are rotating up the head and lurching it forward. So look at what your habits are and how your head and neck are being compromised into that sitting position and see how you can adjust. All right, next slide. All right, Thank you. Remember, you can go back and rewatch this video if you've missed something or want to stretch along at a better time. To get some free resources from me, Help Head Pain is my online course. There is a block there that you can fill out and get a free video sent to your inbox. It'll teach you about one of the habits that we talked about today, and also teach you about a jaw muscle that you can go ahead and start treating. It'll teach you some hands-on massage for that. Katie Massage is my office in Austin, Texas. I do have a lot of good information on Instagram and on YouTube. There are a lot of free videos that can walk you through of like, how are you pairing this pattern? Why do your teeth hurt? So go and find those free resources there. But thank you for having me.
All right, I guess I'll take over from here. Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel Cunningham. I also presented at TICCON this past year. That's how Katie and I actually met each other. I was diagnosed with Tourette's. I keep saying 5 or 6. I had to call my mom and get the final answer. I was diagnosed at 5. And I was a swimmer and water polo player and have just figured out very early on the relationship between breathing and the water, and ended up becoming a personal trainer and had to completely relearn how to move my body on land because water polo is an incredible but very unnatural sport. And so I've learned a lot about movement, and every time I have, it's been to basically create movement patterns to help other people the way that movement, exercise, and breathwork has helped me. So I've started something called TicFit. You can go to ticfit.org. I do also have some resources on there, different products I like to help with pain reduction. We talked a lot about trigger pointing and myofascial release. I have some other just directions to go because there's so many different ways that we tic. And so there's so many different avenues and paths to go on. So what we are focusing on today, we can go and move on to the first slide. Something just to put a whole filter over this, that people with tic disorders compensate in ways as unique as their tics. A lot of people have heard of compensation. Compensating is when our body is not moving in the most optimal way. The body is amazing at still getting the job done. It won't necessarily be the most mechanically sound way, but we're incredible at still getting it done. And if you're moving through life with some sort of disorder or disability, you need to learn how to move within the world to still have your most best meaningful life. If you're colorblind, you might have to learn the order of the traffic lights and not just see the colors. Well, if you have tics, you have to learn about anatomy, functional movement patterns, and myofascial release. And what that's going to do is empower you to be able to understand your tics better, to be able to describe them for your medical professional, to understand what movements are associated with your pain. Is it cumulative? Do you have small repetitive tics throughout the day? And then by the end of the day, everything is just wailing, screaming, hurting. Or do you have more explosive tics? You might only do it 2 or 3 times. Or is it after a big tic storm, which is all of the above for however long? So knowing your anatomy, movement patterns that work best for your body are really going to empower you. And so also, as Katie mentioned, we can't stop tics. That's life with TS. But we can choose certain exercise disciplines, certain movement patterns, and certain myofascial release techniques to help our body as a whole. And so that's kind of what we are focusing on in this portion here, and really looking at the upper body kinetic chain. So we can go on to the next slide. So this is an approach that I love, because how do we give certain exercises and apply it to the gazillion ways that we tic? Whether you tic, you're thrusting your head forward, or all of the different ones that Katie mentioned, your tongue out this way, your cheek sucking this way, head this way. We all have these different things. So this is an incredible guide that's also scalable too. So adults can do this, your kids can do this. This is a great way to start figuring out how your ticking body moves. Because we tic, sometimes it's almost easier to ignore the tic just so you can get on with your day. For me, I still have a pretty big sniffle and abdominal tic that I do. Still a lot of toe ticking. You almost have to ignore that to do your task at hand. But I'd like to put that under the microscope a little bit. And this is our guideline for how to do that. This approach was really brought to the mainstream by strength coach Mike Boyle and physical therapist Gray Cook. It is called the joint by joint approach. And the idea is that each of the bigger joints, there's a ton of different joints in the body, but each of these ones specifically, one should be mobile, one should be stable, then the next should be mobile, the next should be stable. And this is a great way to kind of assess where you are and how your body has compensated. Kind of think of a marionette puppet, and nobody really knows what marionette puppets anymore, but it's like Pinocchio. It has the sticks that crisscross and the strings down below. And when you pull the marionette this way, it pulls the puppet this way. When you pull the marionette this way, it pulls the puppet that way. Well, our tics are doing that to our bodies. Yes, we can put the tics aside to do our task at hand, but that's still doing that to our body. And that can give us a lot of pain. So looking at this, if we kind of walk ourselves down this, starting at the top. So that blue dot is the very top of your cervical spine. That's your axis and your atlas. And that should be mobile. We should be able to rotate our head in different direction in all different circles. The middle to lower part of our cervical spine, that's the neck, should be stable. We're not meant to move the lower part of our cervical spine. Continuing down the spine, right in that middle section there, that blue dot, that's your thoracic spine. That should be mobile. That's the big part that twists us. And then down below, the lumbar spine, that red dot, that should be stable. Because we sit so much, because we're back at school or at work, whatever it is, because we sit so much, a lot of the times that thoracic spine starts to lock up and get really stiff. Well, if that's stiff, then something above or below is going to try to get mobile, because again, the body's really incredible at getting things done. And if we have to twist, it has to come from somewhere. So we'll get to what to do and how you can assess yourself to see if you kind of follow this, this approach. But continuing down, so top of the neck mobile, middle of the bottom of the neck stable, middle of the back mobile, lower back stable, hips mobile, knees stable, ankles mobile, feet stable. Yes, your knee moves, it bends, but it bends like in a specific direction in the hinge. It's not meant to like rotate in crazy different directions. And then if we go back up and kind of branch outward now for what we're talking about today, going down all of the upper extremities. So starting at that middle point in the back, the thoracic spine that should be mobile, moving outward to your shoulder blades. Our shoulder blades should be stable, moving out a little bit further to what we all, consider the shoulder joint, the glenohumeral joint, that should be mobile. Elbows should be stable, wrist should be mobile, hands should be relatively stable. And so we can, and again, this is scalable. So you can assess yourself, and the exercises that we'll talk about later are based on this. And again, that's scalable. So we might not give the same exercise to somebody that needs more thoracic mobility to an adult or a child, but it still should follow this general approach. And again, to kind of see how your tics have cranked on your body, because they do. So if you discover a restriction or an instability, this guideline is something that can help. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So honing in on this upper body chain like we talked about. So it is, again, up to your medical professional to decide the causation of pain, but we can certainly do things to help with that a little bit. Where the pain isn't always the problem. Sometimes it is, but not always. If you have a repetitive, if you have the same tic, it's almost easier to decipher what's going on. If you have a tic that constantly changes and morphs, that's going to be a little bit harder to kind of pinpoint what's going on. But I know a lot of people have the head thrusting back, head tic. I mean, we all have a million of them, but is that the problem or is it not? It's up to the medical professional to figure out what's going on. But let's go back to that joint by joint approach and see how that has affected the rest of the chain. Going back to that marionette puppet, if our tic pulls us back this way, what is that doing to the rest of the chain? So with movement, there's a lot of different highways that we create when we move, voluntarily and involuntarily. When you have that ticking urge, how do you satisfy it? You have to complete the tick somehow, whether you have to do it so many times to do it, whether that's a cumulative effect, or whether it's explosive 1 to 2 times, maybe it's 3, 4, 5, but a lower repetition, a lower rep tick, I'll call that. That's creating different pathways and highways in your musculature. So what we can do is decongest that highway by making new highways, by making new pathways and new things to help. If we're throwing our heads back this way, well, what if we kind of create some new pathways to open up our chest, to stabilize the shoulder, to basically give new traffic areas around these painful areas? It's kind of the traffic analogy. When I really emphasize looking at the whole chain of the ticking area, not to say that there's one magic spot that we're going to miss that we can push and that's going to relieve everything. What I'm saying is that there might be, and that is worth exploring. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So what do we do? All right, so we've got shoulder tics, neck tics, head tics, tongue thrusting tics, vocal tics as well within this as well. So what I want to do is spotlight our rib cage first. Wherever your rib cage is situated, whether it's sitting forward, whether we're slouched, whether we're, do the cool kid driving, wherever your ribs are situated, your head, neck, and shoulders have to follow. So if we can learn about ourselves where our ribs are, that's already going to give us a more optimal chance of creating better pathways for our musculature in our upper body. So learn these things about your rib cage. It's your rib cage position, your shoulder mobility, because that is attached right on the rib cage, and your thoracic mobility. So that very first picture up at the top of the screen is what we look at and think when we talk about ribs. I found a really cool 3D model and I twisted it to the side a little bit so you can see the back where that's your thoracic spine. All of your rib cage, your ribs connect into it, and your sternum in the front. So if you look down below, that is your viewpoint right now. If you look right down at yourself at your rib cage, that's what you're looking at. So when we talk about rib cage expansion, when we talk about breathwork, those ribs house your diaphragm muscle. That's that breathing muscle. It is a muscle. We'll get to some more of that later, but it's part of the rib cage here, and this rib cage is what's going to support your head, neck, and shoulders. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So over on the right, this is a very wordy slide. Over on the right, I just pulled some general definition of knots from WebMD, and I laughed, so I had to include them because they're basically describing Tourette's. What is a knot? A knot is a tender or painful spot in the muscle or fascial tissue. It's an area of overexcited muscle tissue that gets tight. I just really like that word, that overexcited muscle tissue. So when we tick, we just have excited tissue. That was the cutest explanation of a painful tick that I've ever heard of. So I put it up there just to get a smile. The next one, the next definition, muscle knots usually happen because a muscle has been irritated by a repetitive motion. Athletes will notice muscle knots after training one group of muscles for a long period of time. And a muscle might also knot up when it's in an awkward position for too long. Again, describing tics, repetitive motion, awkward positions. A lot of times tics don't necessarily present themselves to optimize mechanical motion. So I just kind of got a kick out of that. To the best of my knowledge, there's no imagery that can show you a knot. You can't do an MRI and X-ray and be like, that's the knot. So again, to Katie's point, you really have to apply this to your own body, but there are very classic spots where knots, where overexcited tissue will build up. So what do we do about it? We need to release the areas restricting movement of a joint that should be mobile. And then we need to stabilize joints that are moving too much. Trigger pointing is a fantastic way to release that excited tissue, foam rolling, and then always a question too, do you use a hard tool or a soft tool? And the answer is, it depends, and both. You use harder tissues to really kind of break down that overexcited tissue, and then soft tools to teach yourself how to decongest these highways. I usually prefer to use softer tools because there's more to gain for you to understand how your body moves. If you're holding on a knot spot, let's say on that upper trap, right at the corner of the shoulder blade, then if we can hold that spot and feel things, the sensation of a knot releasing is almost like a deflation. You're looking for it to just let go and breathe a little bit. So when you do that with a softer tool, you might have to hold it there for a little bit longer, but you're teaching yourself a feeling that then you can replicate and maybe even apply towards other tics as well. I'll use harder tools. Honestly, if I just don't have the bandwidth, or by the end of the day, I know it's tight, I know I need to get this knot spot out, I might use a harder tool just to kind of work on that tissue a little bit. And that's just the ebb and flow of how it goes. So both are the answer. Massage, I have an incredible masseuse, and when you find your masseuse, don't let them go. And here Katie is to help share with us what that means and what a good masseuse can do, who really knows neuromuscular, neuromuscular educated, and of course stretching, right? There's muscles that get bound up from being too tight, and we need to release them and make sure that they're pliable. We can, oh yeah, and that was my picture in the middle. I tried to make my own little dots of where the knot spots are, but I very much enjoyed Katie's knot spots picture, a little borb. Let's go and move on to the next slide. So how do we create these new patterns? What does that even mean? Neuromuscular re-education is a very fancy word of just saying reteaching your body how to move with mechanics in mind, right? To restore mechanical function of your body. And so to do that, we have to meet and befriend your rib cage and your shoulder blades. The shoulder, Katie mentioned it once, the shoulder girdle, it's actually a lot more complicated than people think. When you say shoulder joint, everybody points right here, but it's actually made up of 3 different joints. Your shoulder blade on your back, nobody can see it. You're not looking and be like, is that in the right position? Is that feeling where it should be? That should be a stable joint. And oftentimes, because of our rib position, whether we're slouching this way, elevates from that upper trap and levator scapula. If you kind of are over, is it even a word, over postulating? Then those shoulders are going to maybe heavily depressed and then upward rotate, but there's different things that they can do back there. So we need to befriend the rib cage and the shoulder blades and really figure out how they are connected to your body. There's some people that have too much mobility, kind of beyond what that normal range of motion is, which can elicit a sensation and urge to tic as well. I've known some people that have like slippier joints, and that slippage is the tic. So then we would want to give them stabilizing exercises. And first of all, see if that reduces pain and discomfort. And then what can that do for the urge itself? Is that possible to reduce that urge by giving the body these additional highways, these additional pathways? So these new patterns, yeah, again, will help reduce the traffic to that area that tics. If you are somebody that elevates your shoulder a lot when you tic, I wouldn't necessarily give you shoulder shrugs to do, because then we're continually working those muscles that are already ticking. So I have 3 exercises for us here. And the first one will assess shoulder mobility. How mobile is your shoulder? And then we will look at another exercise that assesses shoulder blade stability. And then we will look at thoracic rotation. A lot of the times people are surprised to see that they're really good rotation on one side and not so much on the other. And then the bonus is lateral rib cage breathing, because I think breath is a tool that we can use, and I'll explain more about that later. We can move on to the next slide. So here are our exercises. And I have spent the last 2 years recording, filming, and putting things on YouTube with different exercises with voiceovers about what they might do for tics. So feel free to check that out on YouTube as well. But we can start with the sun salute one.
This amazing exercise is a fabulous shoulder opener. It's called a sun salute. We're doing this right here laying on top of a foam roller, so your arms have a little bit of extra space. You start with your hands in prayer position, take them all the way up overhead, reach for the ground, flip your palms to the outside, and try to drag your pinkies all the way around. Do 5 reps, 10 reps. Usually this opens up pretty significantly with the more repetitions that you do. As you move your hands around, big shoulder stretch, and squeeze your shoulder blades around that foam roller.
So once people do that, a lot of people are shocked to find just how internally rotated their shoulders are and just how tight that is, and then how quickly that actually opens up and can take some pressure off of the neck. So let's look at reach, roll, lift. This one is shoulder blade stability.
Reach, roll, lift. Start out on all fours. You can sit back onto your heels a little bit with a nice straight spine. Reach your hand out in front of you. Roll your palm up towards the ceiling and then lift your hand off the ground.
That one's particularly fun because everybody's like, it's just lifting my arm, right? Yes, in the exact opposite position of how you sit all day. Where we sit, our shoulders are protracted and internally rotated. So now here they are extended, rotated, and yeah, that move. Let's go into thread the needle. This is looking at the middle of your back, thoracic mobility.
Thread the needle is an upper back thoracic spine mobility drill. You'll start out on hands and knees with a foam roller placed lengthwise alongside of you. Whichever hand is furthest away from the foam roller, you'll reach underneath your other arm and push that roller away. As you do so, you're rotating your thoracic spine, and you might also feel a stretch in your shoulder blades as well. You can utilize this for any tics in your legs, arms, or postural considerations.
And then our bonus down here is lateral ribcage breathing. If there's so much buzz and talk about breath work, but this one I think is a really incredible tool for us to feel where breath goes instead of just being told to breathe. Feel where it goes. Let's go ahead and we can click on that one.
Grab a thick band, a towel, or a belt, crisscross it around your rib cage, and as you breathe in wide into your rib cage so that you actually feel tension on the band. Breathe in and then breathe out. Simple, effective, and you can actually feel that rib cage expansion. I love the idea of a 360 breath, of basically widening that whole cavity. And let's go ahead and go on to the next slide here. Thread the needle is an upper back thoracic spine mobility. Grab a thick band, a towel,
or two. Good time. That's a lot of me talking though. All right. So keep alluding to breath work. I like to think of breath work as a hammer. We look at a hammer, we know what it does. You hit things with it. Great. That's the bulk of what we know. And we know a great deal about it. And it's an incredible tool that everybody has, everybody needs. We need mindfulness. We need relaxation. But did we know that there's also another tool on this? That back end can remove nails. It's a whole other separate tool on there. I believe that to be kind of what this rib cage breathing is. And that's a tool to shift us into a parasympathetic state. Fitness, exercise overlaps with neurology in the central nervous system. When you're exercising, you're tapping into your central nervous system. Well, Tourette's is a neurological condition. So there's a bridge here, there's a gap here that using our breath, anatomically speaking, as a tool can help create this downshift. Let's go ahead and move on to, on that very bottom one, I put neuromuscular traffic. I keep trying to come up with different ways to explain this, but if we can do this diaphragmatic breathing and reduce that urge, that physical urge to move something, and with these new patterns that we've created and built, can that send this neural traffic somewhere else and something else that we can do with it. So we can still satisfy an urge without overusing our tissues, our muscles. Let's go ahead and go on to that next slide. So the cliffhanger is this, that if we are not breathing diaphragmatically, if our diaphragm muscle, because again, it's a muscle, is kind of tucked too high up in our ribs, then we become chest breathers, we become thoracic breathers. Well, we spoke about compensation. When we are thoracically breathing up and through our chest, the compensatory muscles are in your neck. And that's what we're here for, because we have neck pain from tics. Well, here we are breathing, constantly using those neck muscles when there's something else that we can do, somewhere else where we can send that breath, somewhere else where we can send that neural traffic to not put so much pressure on these muscles that we tic with. So love Katie's SCM stretch. I've seen a lot of different ones. I just like the way she explains it the best. So if you want to try that stretch again, where you anchor your clavicle down, rotate your chin into an opposite direction, and think about breathing wide, opening up that lower rib cage. If you're doing that and you have that skill to open up that rib cage, that alone might take a little while to practice. you might actually feel this area deflate. So go ahead and give that a try, where you're pressing down here, chin goes in the opposite direction, and now breathe into the back of the rib cage. Another cue is breathing with your wings. Imagine that you have wings on your back and they're opening, closing. And can you do that and feel this deflate? And then is that a sensation that you can create with other tics that you have? And we can go to the next slide. That is what I have for you today. I have a website up, ticfit.org. I also have some resources and am building movement patterns and programs, fitness programs based on body parts to give you a curated set of exercises for you to figure out that joint by joint approach and how you might be able to continue moving your body in a way that makes you feel better.
Amazing. Both so much. What an amazing presentation. I know, as they both said, our presenters today were at TICON in Dallas with us, and it was lovely having them there, and it was lovely having them tonight. Please use your phone to scan the QR code to complete the survey. It's going to be up for about the next 3 to 5 minutes as we start our Q&A. In addition, we have a new email available for feedback on programming. It's programideas@tourette.org. If you like what you saw tonight, if you have other ideas based on what you saw tonight, or just even other ideas on programming that you'd like to see, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. With that being said, we will start the Q&A section. And I think the first question that we heard a lot from folks in the registration was if both or either of you could talk a little bit more about what tools would you suggest to address neck and shoulder pain, and maybe more specifically talking a little bit about a massage gun option.
Katie, I'll let you take that one.
I'll start first. So I'm going to first start us with something lower key and a little softer to our body that you can work in, especially if you're at home watching TV or anything like that. So this is a microwave neck wrap. It looks like a huge collar and it is filled with beads. I've felt them that it feel really heavy and weighted. That actually might be really great for your nervous system. This one is sort of medium weighted, but does remind me to take my shoulders out of my ears. So you'd microwave it. What I like is that it's got this pop collar to add some heat onto the back of the neck. Add some heat, look at where this falls and where that SCM is. So it's right going to be around there. It'll get a little bit of the front of the pecs and of course the traps in the upper back. So it's a lot better than those snake ones that as soon as you put them on, all the beads go down and you're left with nothing on your neck. So this is a good way to add the weight to bring that down. This is really great with kids as well. Make sure you check out how hot you want to make this pack. If one aggravating factor, perpetuating factor for any type of muscular tension, I'm curious, I'll learn about it later, I'm sure. You can drop it down in the YouTube comments once this comes out, is if cold breezes really can aggravate muscle tension with Tourette's when you're ticking. So if, for me, I have to drive the kids to school really early in the morning and it's cold outside, I'll microwave this and put it on. And it can weigh my shoulders down, warm up the muscles so that I can move my neck easier through the day and keep me from driving like this. So you can go without a specific tool using something in here. Massage gun, if you do use those, I would go ahead and say don't use them on your neck. We've got a lot of very important vasculature through here, so blood flow and nerves and bones that need to be in specific places. So don't use them there. Upper trap, parts of the back, that could be okay. I'd also suggest to try instead of thinking like drill it and kill it, where you're going to turn that thing on high and just like sit on there and just pound that spot out. I would suggest sometimes trying it on super low so that you're actually just stimulating the nerves. And back to Raquel's point, adding in that breath work to expand the rib cage, even if that's not where you're working, but to calm the nervous system, reset, but add that vibration in to wake up the nerves and to calm the nerves to bring them to a new reset, especially if you're doing some mindset with that. So that's my safety tip and a little upgrade for those.
Anything you'd like to add, Raquel, or can I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I covered a great deal of it. I have a whole basket of things that I use. I have trigger point balls, I have a peanut, I have the cane stick, I have a whole bunch of things. But to that point, actually, with the Olympics that just happened, there was an article I read about divers that they were asking why they rinse off before and after they get in the water every time. I'm like, oh yeah, that is strange. It is actually because their muscles keep going from hot in the pool water and then out to the cold auditorium back and forth. It actually puts their muscles in cramp and spasm. And so to your point, yeah, keep your muscles at a nice temperature. Don't let them go hot, cold, because that could cause more spasming. So that was interesting.
Well, I'm going to drop the QR code, everybody, just so you could see Katie and Raquel's face a little bit better. Our next question asks about how often to perform these exercises that we're discussing today.
It depends, which is always the answer, what type of exercise you're doing. If it is lower impact, I mean, you can be doing that every day. If it's a thread the needle, you can be doing that daily. If there's a load to it, then to create an adaptation for that movement pattern, 2 to 3 times a week, 2 at minimum, 3 to 4 at most, depending on the load that you're doing. But for all of the exercises that I showed you today, you can be doing those every day, no problem.
I think that's great. I think you addressed both of how you would think of doing some self-massage and stretching, and weight training as well, and stability work, because we want to keep those stabilizers that Raquel was explaining, to keep those turned on so you can ask for them to work during the day. A lot of different massage stretching techniques you can do 3 times a day. There's some very specific nooks and cranny muscles, like a little one in the mouth, that I would say you're only going to do that 1 time a day. But our big cheek muscle, which is our chewer, and we're using it all the time, we could do that twice a day if that worked. And just the key, remember, always listen to your body and know when to back off. If you're in exceptional pain at the time that you're going into, rescue 911 emergency self-care, a little bit at a time, and figure out what's going to work to complement it, that's calming, hot or cold, whatever you may need to go with that. That may add to it.
Amazing. All right, and then our next question we have is from Madeline, and it says, because of my tics, I have some super sensitive muscles. Like I get massages, and when I first started, the masseuse could hardly work on me. I will do heat and cold packs as needed to calm the muscles, but is there anything else I can be doing?
I would look at the chain. Are there other areas that you can move to try to take some tension off of those super sensitive muscles? That's something to look at. And then there's other softer tools. I really love Yamana ball, courageous ball, and they're very soft. And so there's softer myofascial work that you can do just to start moving that tissue a little bit. But I would also look along your kinetic chain and see like where you can start there. And then when that improves, assess how those other super sensitive muscles are doing.
Yeah, so adding in that, maybe you're thinking of it as well, as she's saying, start gently. You might just think of it as rotating your torso and reaching across body and having the shoulder blades glide on the back, shortening and lengthening your muscles quite a few times and throughout the day may be a good way to get started. You also need to keep in mind that there's more things that can contribute to muscle tension, muscle tightness, and trigger points. So it could be dehydration. It could be a side effect of medications. It can also be that the act of ticking or the act of working out, they're sort of muscularly very similar. We could be burning through a whole lot of magnesium or other things in the body. So you could have a lack of that. And then you have a default of certain minerals or vitamins in the body that you would need. Interesting, you could have hypothyroidism, which can lead to muscle tension as well. So there are things outside of just this that are good to look at and talk through and think, oh, it maybe, or a huge part is Tourette's, but what else could it be? I call this the yes and theory. And I like to say that you're entitled to more than one problem and more than one pain. A lot of times it's really rough to hear. But once you sit with that, then you're like, of course, I had a car accident some time ago. I had a traumatic childhood. I have something going on with my hip. I have Tourette syndrome. I have hyperflexibility into these joints. So keep in mind that you could have a few things going on too.
Well, with that, I do notice it is the top of the hour, and I'll be considerate of everybody else's time. I want to thank Katie and Raquel again so much. It's always a pleasure hearing both of you talk, and we're just so grateful to have you both. Thank you to everybody who came today to see the presentation. We hope to see you again very, very soon. And with that, we are done for the night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you guys. Don't be afraid to reach out.